Welcome to Baat Pachisi. At Baat Pachisi, we are going to discuss game theory, what is the game theory, and how it is used to make a decision in a competitive environment. And to discuss game theory with us is an expert, Professor Suresh Deman, who is a specialist in mergers and acquisitions and regulations, corporate governance, econometrics, game theory, and financial modeling, and other areas of real estate and finance and economics. So he has received B.Sc, MA, MPhil, and Ph.D. in area of game theoretic methods and application to takeovers with Professor C.R. as the mentor. So let's start the discussion with Professor Deman and understand what is the game theory, how it initiated, and how it helps in making decisions in a competitive environment. Welcome, Professor Daman. Welcome to Baat Pachisi. So, game theory, we have been hearing this terminology, this theory, a lot about it. So, kindly tell us what is game theory, how you got interested in it, and how game theory can help us make decisions in a complex competitive environment. Professor Daman, you are welcome to Baat Pachisi.
Thank you, Madhavji. My interest in the game theory was generated in United States when I went there to get my PhD degree.
Mhm,
And prior to this, we had a very little reference in microeconomics about a prisoner's
mhm,
dilemma, which I
mhm,
never understood when I was a student here, nor
mhm.
did the professor who was teaching me knew about it. So I
Yes,
was not
yes.
surprised. Now, there was a young professor there who came from Princeton University,
Mhm.
who was also on the PhD committee of Arvind Panagadia, who
Okay.
was the vice chairman of Niti Aayog here, and formerly he was my classmate in masters.
Oh, yes, yes.
So
Mhm,
he told me that the areas of development economics or regional urban economics, input part, output models, they don't make much sense in a market economy,
mhm.
and we do in our departments only for the third world countries, to advise them and things. Otherwise, in the United States, they make no sense. So
Okay.
he told me that he was teaching at the Princeton University, and he came across a paper by uh, Grossman and Hart. Grossman was at Chicago University, and Oliver
Mhm,
Hart was at the MIT that time. Now,
mhm,
MIT professor Oliver Hart got the Nobel Prize. I'm not sure
mhm,
about the Grossman, probably he also got it.
mhm,
So he said he thought there was a problem with their paper, and this
mhm.
paper came out during the uh, Reaganomics, Ronald Reagan area of you know uh, opening the economy and deregulation and
Okay.
the against the antitrust law to relax them. So the
Mhm,
mergers and takeovers becomes easier because there are a lot
mhm,
of restrictions. He said for the competitive economy, it is more
mhm,
efficient to deregulate them rather than keep the regulations firm. So it
mhm,
took about a couple of months for me to, because he didn't give me the name of the paper
mhm,
except the author's name. So it took for a
mhm,
while for me to figure it out which paper he was talking about. In the meantime, I signed up some course which was run by
mhm,
Alvin Roth. Alvin Roth
mhm.
also got a Nobel Prize. He's not now at Harvard, but he was at the University of Pittsburgh. And there were
Okay.
another guy from Israel. He was giving the
Mhm,
seminars. Uh, Samuel Jamir. So this is how I
Okay.
got interested in this paper.
All right. So, Professor Deman, to make this seemingly very complex theory, game theory, easy to understand for the people who may not be aware of this. So, we can start with prisoner's dilemma. So, how the prisoner's dilemma perhaps better explains the situation
Okay. So let me start with
where
a basic.
one person depend, yes, yes, please.
Now, actually, in the
Hello.
layman terms, uh, can you hear me?
Hmm. Oh, yes,
In
yes,
the
I
layman,
can. Please, please.
in the layman terms, let me explain for the
Hmm.
your viewers
Hmm.
who may not be familiar with the technical terms.
Hmm.
I was watching a movie called
Hmm.
Last Emperor of China. It
Okay.
was an American movie,
Hmm.
and the one of the things was a dialogue between the last emperor of China, who was imprisoned after the Mao Zedong seized the power, and he was
Okay.
released in 1980s later on. And
Hmm.
the Americans made a movie about his life, and he had a
Okay.
English teacher, you know. So
Okay.
there was a dialogue between English teacher and
Hmm.
last emperor of China when he was a student of him for English.
Okay.
So the dialogue was
Hmm.
between the Confucius and his teacher, and the
Okay.
dialogue was like this:
Hmm.
I know that you know
Hmm.
that I know that
Yes.
you know that I know. So you
Yes.
can imagine 6th
Hmm.
century BC, Confucius
Hmm.
was almost 6th century BC. He was
Hmm.
talking about this idea of common knowledge. Actually,
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
phrase gives you an idea of common knowledge
Hmm.
that you know about me and I know about you, and we both
Hmm.
know about each other. Thus, in 1970, there was a Robert Aumann, a Israeli economist at
Hmm.
Cornell or Princeton, who actually
Hmm.
formalized in a mathematical form in 1970 in a journal what is called
Hmm.
the common knowledge in technical term.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's the one aspect of that it has been known for centuries ago,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
concept of. Now the thing is, most of the economic theory are in the partial general equilibrium framework, because you can't
Hmm.
actually conceptualize, capture everything else, because there are a lot of
Hmm.
things you omit. Like Mrs. John Robinson said, the neoclassical case of free market economy is that you assume everything and then you solve the problem. So you never get
Okay.
the desired result.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so basically that's where the whole game theory developed. But before that, in 1940s, as I said before,
Hmm.
that Professor C.R. Rao is a world-renowned statistician. He was a student at Cambridge for his doctorate with the well-known
Okay.
statistician Fisher, Edwin
Hmm.
Fisher, and uh, Professor Lewis, who is a well-known development economist. He was conducting seminar on a book, the first book which came in 1944, one Newman
Hmm.
and Morgenstern, on the game
Yes.
theory,
Yes. Hmm.
games and economic behavior.
Hmm.
So they were talking about zero-sum game. If you play a game for a long time, nobody wins, nobody gain. So Mrs.
Hmm.
John Robinson, who, as you know, was a Marxian economist then, she was a young
Hmm.
lecturer at Cambridge.
Okay.
She said, "What's the time of wasting? What's the time of point of wasting time in a game when you nobody gained and nobody lost?"
Yes, yes. The Professor Daman, kindly explain this term zero sum game for our common viewers. So, what is a zero sum game, and in what situation we can generally call that this game is a zero sum game?
The situation is like, suppose you superpowers. Now there is only one superpower, but in before the collapse of Soviet Union, there were two big superpowers, USSR and United States, and
Of
they
course.
reach an agreement on disarmament,
Mm-hmm.
non-proliferation treaty.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if suppose they agree to a commitment,
Mm-hmm.
then there is no problem. But actually, in spite of signing an agreement, they try to go behind the scene
Mm-hmm.
and they try to produce more weapons. Similarly, the others also produce the new weapons, their own
Mm-hmm.
weapons, nuclear weapons. So ultimately, this multiplies. So we reach in a situation where nobody win, nobody gain, but as a result of that, actually there is a more arms are produced, but they really neutralize each other because everybody is like in the cartel, oil cartel. They reach an agreement, so it is a cooperation. When you reach an
Mm-hmm.
agreement, it's a cooperation, but
Mm-hmm.
then people go around and produce more to sell their oil at a lower price.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, zero sum gain is that ultimately, even for a simple game of head and tail, if you
Mm-hmm.
play for a long time, ultimately nobody will win, nobody will lose because uh, it will be total neutral. But the thing is, you have to play this game for infinite number of time. So if you have a lot of money, probably you will never lose.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
if suppose you play only for few times in a day, you might somebody may be a winner, others may be a loser. So something like
Okay.
that.
Okay,
Oh,
Yeah, Professor
yeah,
Professor Daman. So kindly
yeah,
explain about the very conceptual, this framework of game theory can be further explained in a general terms in layman's language by prisoner's dilemma.
yeah.
So kindly explain that.
Okay, prisoner's dilemma. It's uh, s- simply suppose there are two convicts.
Mhm.
The argument runs like this. Suppose the
Mm,
police picked up two people
mm,
and they put them in the prison,
mm.
but in these separate cells.
Yes.
They are not allowed to communicate. Suppose they are members of the gang and they are picked up two people of the gang, but they are
Mm,
taken into the same different prison cells. If they
mm.
are in the same cell, then they can collaborate.
Yes, yes.
But if they are put in the same different cells,
Mm,
and then the police goes and speak to each separately.
mm,
So now the best strategy is they don't confess at all.
mm,
Okay,
mm,
but very difficult to enforce it
mm,
unless there is a gang master outside
mm,
and they know if they go out, they will kill them anyway.
mm,
So you can enforce the
mm,
collusion. But if there is no leader of the gang, then what happens is they talk to each other. Now, if they speak to one, these things
mm,
the other might have said something, must have confessed the crime.
mm,
Okay.
mm.
Similarly, if they go to a second prisoner, he also might think that if I confess and the other does not, then there is a problem. He might get a greater sentence, larger sentence.
Yes.
So actually, non-confessing is the best strategy. And the second best strategy is to confess together, and
Mm,
they might get the little bit higher sentence.
mhm,
But if one confess and the other, then one
mm.
might get a light sentence, the other might get a longer sentence. That's the present. So the best strategy for them is to not to confess, but it's difficult to enforce. Therefore, confession is the best outcome, and they might get a lighter sentence. That's the whole dilemma. Dilemma, prisoner's dilemma is what to do. Actually, dilemma
Oh,
itself,
okay.
because he can't communicate,
Mhm.
he has
Yes,
no
yes.
knowledge about the other prisoner. That's the dilemma. Real dilemma is
Mhm.
right. So
Okay, okay, Professor Deman. So, yes, please continue, Professor Deman.
yeah, so that's the key, how to solve this prisoner's dilemma. Key, what to do in such situation when they are separately interviewed, whether to confess or not to confess. Non-confess is the best strategy where they get because police can't prove anything. Nobody's confessing. But confessing is the best outcome, because if one confess, one the other does not confess, then the person who confess will get less sentence, and one who does not confess will get a longer sentence, because the other will become a witness.
Yes, yes, Professor Daman. So, kindly also tell us that, in what kind of, what are the job opportunities for a person who may be, what are the basic qualifications or the inclinations required to go into this, and how, which are the, well-known international institution which are having these courses, and also tell us, enlighten us about the courses which are being run in India, well-known institution which are running these courses, and the what kind of the job opportunities may be available to anybody who may be inclined to go, starting from the preliminary requirements that you have to have this kind of a requirement or this education or subject, and then perhaps you can go into this game theory.
Now, I tell you in my own experience, the mathematics is the backbone.
Yes, yes.
And as you know, uh, there was uh, a British economist
Hmm.
uh, who said once that if you know mathematics and a language,
Hmm.
Bernard Shaw, actually Lord Bernard Shaw, who comes
Okay.
from your area of expertise, theater, from the
Yes,
theater.
yes, yes.
Lord Bernard Shaw said, he was an Irishman, that if you know
Hmm.
mathematics and a language,
Hmm.
you can learn everything in the world. So, in fact, my economic studies did not play that much of a role as much as the mathematics did of my undergrad
Oh.
degree. So,
Hmm.
mathematics is a very important thing. Economics you can learn later on, there is no problem. But I
Yes, yes.
strongly
Hmm.
suggest at
Hmm.
least up to the 12th grade, you should have the
Hmm.
mathematics as an optional subject,
Hmm.
or even possible statistics and mathematics and economics. This is a very good combination, or business
Hmm.
or management. And if it is possible, you have a undergraduate degree with maths background, that will be even better, because
Hmm.
most
Hmm.
American universities, they are very much mathematical oriented. Although the British
Okay.
universities are not so much, but they are also following the American pattern. So
Okay.
now,
Professor Daman, uh, I have your book with me. So, would you like to explain who are the gentlemen on the cover page?
yeah, yes, on on your uh, right hand side, when you look at the book, on your right side is Professor John Nash, who was
Hmm.
the first recipient of the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences in
Hmm.
1974, 1994. And the other was
Hmm.
an Indian well-known statistician who was the director of Indian Statistical Institute in Delhi, Calcutta, and various places, Professor C.R. Rao, who is
Yes,
now
yes.
101 year
Hmm.
old. So after retirement from
Yes, yes,
uh,
yes.
Indian Statistical Institute, he moved to United States, and he served in the University of Pittsburgh
Hmm.
and University of Pennsylvania, and he's a well-known,
Hmm.
world-renowned statistician who got almost
Hmm.
every prize in the world. And because there is
Hmm.
no Nobel Prize in mathematics and statistics, so he can't get it, but he got a science laureate in America, which is equivalent of Nobel Prize, which was given to Professor
So
Khorana
there is
in.
no Professor. Then there is no Nobel Prize in mathematics and
No,
statistics.
no Nobel Prize in mathematics, no Nobel Prize in statistics, because the Nobel didn't
No.
like the mathematics and statistics.
Please
He was
tell us more
actually,
about it. This is very maybe most of us didn't know. At least I didn't know. Let me be very frank that there is no Nobel Prize in mathematics and statistics. So this is very interesting. Kindly tell us more how it happened in your perception. What do you
yeah,
read about
I
it?
think the Alfred Nobel was the one who invented. explosive or something, right?
Dynamite.
Dynamites, explosive,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
he then he set up a actually some fund to
Hmm.
promote the science, you know,
Hmm. Hmm.
physics, chemistry,
Hmm.
these science and biology, these areas,
Hmm.
to actually give some impetus to those people who are working in these areas. So he created a fund, donated some fund which will be used to
Hmm.
give a prize, for the excellence in physics, chemistry, and biological sciences. And this was,
Hmm.
I think, in set up in 90s sometime, uh, because
Hmm.
the first Nobel Prize in, I thought, sorry, in economics it was set up much later, but in
Hmm.
the science it was probably around his own time,
Hmm.
probably about 100 years now or
Hmm.
so. But in
Hmm.
economic sciences, it came later in 1970s. I think the first prize was given to uh, uh, Jane, John Tinbergen, was the first
Hmm.
recipient of Nobel Prize, on
Hmm.
Asian Dilemma. There was a famous book
Hmm.
written by him, Asian Dilemma.
Hmm.
He got the
Hmm.
Nobel Prize in 1970. After that, I think they keep getting more American economists. I think Professor Lewis was also the development economist. He was a co-sharer of the Nobel Prize of 1970 now. So this is the prize given
So
to
you're
people in
talking.
excellence in science and biological, physical sciences and biological science.
So there is a lot of in your book. There is a lot of calculation, formula, and all that. There are a lot of mathematics. So I was just looking at pages like this. So a lot of
Ah,
what we used to read and solve a complex problem in engineering. So those kind of complex problems are there. But do you have any idea that why they didn't have what is the root cause of not having a Nobel Prize in mathematics and statistics? This is very interesting.
not having what?
Nobel Prize in mathematics and statistics, as you
Oh,
have
yes, yes.
disclosed.
No, but now they have done in the game theory has been included in in economic sciences. So economic earlier it used to be a Nobel Prize in economics. Now they have done
Uh-huh.
it to economic sciences to make it a little
Mhm,
broader. So they included
mhm,
game theory into it.
mhm,
Now in game
mhm.
theory they got at least 10 Nobel Prizes now in the area of game theory, but under
10
the
Nobel
umbrella of economic
Prizes.
sciences.
10 Nobel Prizes in game
Yes,
theory.
almost 10 Nobel Prizes. And this guy
Oh.
who taught me at the University of Pittsburgh, Alvin Roth,
Mhm,
he moved to
mhm.
now Harvard. He also got the Nobel Prize 2 years ago, 2, 3 years ago.
Okay, so this is very interesting. Maybe some people are hearing it for the first time that there is no Nobel Prize in mathematics and statistics. But coming back to the subject of game theory and the internationally renowned institution, which are holding such courses in undergraduate or postgraduate or doctoral level. So kindly have a brief view of that and those counterpart, Indian counterpart as well.
So let me begin by the Indian counterparts first. Indian
Hmm.
Statistical Institute, Delhi,
Okay. Hmm.
Chennai.
Hmm.
These are the two places where they are game theorists,
Hmm.
quite well-known game theorists. And also at Bangalore, there is a guy
Hmm. Hmm.
who does game theory at the management school in Bangalore. These are the
Hmm.
three institutions where, but still the game theory has not become so popular in India as much as it
Hmm.
is overseas. In fact, in America, if a department of economics does not have a game
Hmm.
theorist, they
Hmm.
consider this department is of a poor quality. So the game theory has become like a landmark of
Hmm.
excellence of the department or its ranking. So in the United States, I tell you, the Stony Brook University is one which has a lot of game theorists in it. It's actually every year they have I think every 4 years they have some kind of a mela, a game
Okay.
theory mela fair, game
Uh-huh.
theory fair kind of thing, where
mm,
hundreds of thousands of game theorists they assemble there, and
mhm,
almost every university has a game theorist there. Among the
mhm,
top among the top 50 universities, you will always have a game theorist there,
mhm.
working in the area. And and the other country where you will find game theory, where most of the game theorists actually have originated from, there is Israel. The Hebrew University, surprisingly, the, I would say more than 50% or a vast majority of game theorists in the world are Jewish people. So it has
All
something
right.
to, this is quite shocking. A vast majority of game theorists are Jewish, and they have
So
something
most
which is
of the, but at the same time, as matter, just I'm just remembering that most of the Nobel Prize are also won by
yes,
the
yes.
Jewish people.
Most of the Nobel Prize is dominated by Jewish people. So there is a little bit, I think, no doubt there are excellence there. There is a
Mm.
very excellent brain. But the other thing is there is a caucus functioning, The all these Nobel Prizes are not so neutral, They have some
Of course,
American bias.
of course, there is nothing is neutral. Some influences or some linkages or some group always
Networking,
work in
networking.
networking.
Yes.
That's a better description. So, can
Mm.
you, Professor Daman, tell us, one of the very complex or important problem, which was, understood further, or related decisions were taken where the game theory was applied?
Yes. Now I tell you, the game theory is distinct from the other uh, techniques used in finance, management, and economics, because the others they don't have a uh, opponent. There's nothing in the competitive market. You don't have any theory
Mm-hmm,
prior to the introduction of game theory. The other players was a passive player. Even a decision theory was there, but the
mm-hmm,
only one player was active, the other was a passive player. So you are playing a
mm-hmm,
game against a passive player. So that was the
mm-hmm,
decision theory. But econometrics or many estimation testing, all these economic theory, hypothesis testing, they didn't have anything taken into account what your opponent is going to do. But in the game theory, what you do is you take a decision and you analyze the opponent and you decide what is the
hello, hello, hello. So these are the very fascinating and important aspect of the game theory. Professor Daman was telling us. So, uh, where these game theories are applied are in the salary negotiation to save money while buying any product or high value product, making money in the stock market, real estate negotiation, in fantasy sports, in game, and in competitive auctions where one person's offered price is dictated or also governed by the price offered by the other competitors. So, this is a very interesting subject and unique in a way that in this situation there are competitive, there are two players at least to apply and maybe more. So, this is the very interesting discussion we are having with Professor Daman, who has an experience of teaching at a lot of universities across the world, and he has also has interaction and interacted with well-known John Nash. So when he we will talk to him about what is the Nash equilibrium, in how game theory can help us have a better world by uh, solving related problems, complex problems in negotiation. So that is very interesting. And about not having uh, Nobel Prize in mathematics and statistics, I didn't know about it. This is the so this is how we, if we interact with people, knowledgeable people, we get some information which is not with us for in a competitive environment. So this is very fascinating. And as well as the game theory is a theoretical framework to conceive social situation among competing players and produce optimal decision making of independent and competing actors in a strategic session. So this is in total how this game theory is defined. So we'll be talking more, interacting with Professor Diamond about the game theory. So, Professor Deman, you have had opportunity to interact with John Nash. So, kindly tell more about him. What is
Yeah.
his contribution in this area, and anything
Actu-
more interesting about game theory and its application and implications?
Now, you'll be surprised uh, the work on which John Nash got the Nobel Prize. It was
Hmm.
his undergraduate paper project.
Okay, okay.
He was a student at the Carnegie
Uh,
Mellon University in Pittsburgh, which is a quite top
hmm.
ranking Ivy League university.
Yeah.
And he was a student undergraduate. Then he wrote a project.
Hmm,
And on that project, he actually published a paper as an undergraduate student
hmm, hmm,
in
hmm,
1944 or something,
hmm, hmm.
which was published in Econometrics at that time, is a top ranking journal. And since then, it became a Nash equilibrium after
Nash
his name.
equilibrium. So please tell us what is Nash.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about it. What is Nash equilibrium?
So Nash equilibrium is the optimal outcome, you know.
Mhm, mhm,
So any I said in the prisoner's dilemma, if one tell
mhm,
the confess, the other does not confess is unstable.
mhm,
This is Nash equilibrium, but it's unstable. So if same way, symmetrically, same way, the second
mhm,
person confess and the first does not, it is also unstable. So the stable
mhm,
equilibriums are either confess or not confess. So
mhm,
not confess is the best strategy, but it
mhm,
doesn't stay. So the confessing is the also a Nash equilibrium. In the sense, when I assign a conjecture about you,
mhm.
conjecture means some probability, okay, what
Yeah.
I'm going to do, and same you
Mhm,
assign some conjecture probability to me, and
mhm.
suppose our conjectures turn out to be true about each other, then that is the Nash equilibrium, optimal outcome.
Mhm, mhm.
So, actually, I give you an example, which was published by in the
Please.
newspaper.
Okay,
It is
please.
also used in the military strategy.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Like
Mm.
Mao Zedong said in the military writing, if enemy is
Okay.
sharp, you become sharper. If enemy is sharper, you become the sharpest. So actually, he was
Okay.
talking about the best response.
Mhm,
So the game theory is how to make a best response to your opponent. But this is in the
mhm,
non-cooperative game. Because as
mhm.
I said, that
Mhm.
non-cooperative game is the reality in a market economy. Under communism,
Okay.
only a
Mm.
cooperative game. Non-cooperative game is not possible. Under
Yeah, yeah.
a
That's
military dictator
that.
or under communism, the
Oh, yes.
non-cooperative, and because of the transaction cost of enforcing
Mhm.
because state, for cooperation, the state is incurring the cost of putting them
Mhm.
together, but there is a real transaction cost, and therefore non-cooperative game, like shareholders, managers don't act in the interest of the shareholders. Then, in order to
Mhm.
discipline them, there is a cost, because somebody has to take the pain and spend time and money to do some research and identify that the managers are not doing their job in the interest of the shareholders. So there is a cost, transaction cost. So the game will be non-cooperative. And there is a
Okay.
free
Okay.
rider problem, because if somebody does something for the corporation by spending his
Mhm.
time, if anything
Mhm.
good is done, then everybody benefits without paying for it. And we call
Okay.
them the
Okay.
free riders. So there are a lot of
Okay. Okay.
problems which we address.
Okay, Professor Damas, this is very interesting experience talking to you about game theory, and I hope that our listeners, those who watch our program, will be enlightened in a very significant way about the game theory. So, how can you sum up the present scenario and the application of the game theory, where it is heading, or there are something new things which are happening, there is some refinement in application area or its conceptual format, if you can add something to it.
Yes, actually, to tell you the truth, there are some journals.
Hmm.
For example, Econometrics.
Mm-hmm.
This was a journal which is the top journal in economics, considered as a top journal.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, in 1950s or 60s, John Robinson was offered the editorship of this journal, and she
Mm-hmm.
refused, she declined by making
Mm-hmm.
the comment, following comment:
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be the editor of a journal which I can't read. I mean, she was commenting in a derogatory sense. It is all becoming mathematics. There is no economics in it. So
Right,
these
right.
days, this journal is, I would say, a vast majority of papers are published using game theory, more mathematical, conceptual fashion. But as to the
Mm-hmm.
practical application, there has been a sub development that it
Mm-hmm.
can be used. Professor Rao gave a address to international conference in game theory in
Mm-hmm.
Hyderabad, and Professor Rao really made very good comments. And you'll be surprised, Professor Rao's first two PhD students at the
Mm-hmm.
ISI, Indian Statistical Institute in Delhi, they
Mm-hmm.
are game theorists, and very
Okay.
well known game theorists, very well known game theorists actually. One is
Mm-hmm.
Professor G. Partha Sarthi at the Chennai University ISI, who
Mm-hmm.
retired now. He must be in 80s. And the other
Mm-hmm.
professor was Raghavan in United States. He uses in computer science.
Okay.
In fact, at the Central University, one of the uh, courses which is being taught at the
Mm-hmm.
computer science department has a game theory in it, which I
Mm-hmm.
gave few lectures in Central University.
Okay.
But the main area which is identified
Mm-hmm.
by Professor Rao was detecting, detecting terrorism. The strategy to
Okay, this
detect
is
the
very
terrorists.
interesting.
So the counter-terrorism strategy is used. They use the game-theoretic techniques to find the real culprit. There are some computer technology also developed about the whereabouts. I am not really an expert in that area, but Professor Rao said that the game theory is used now in
Mm-hmm.
finding out, tracking down the terrorists. Counter-terrorism. That's very amazing area,
Oh,
because
yes,
game theory
yes,
is
it
often
is.
criticized for not having any practical application, but now they have been using in computer science and other many areas.
This is, thank you very much, Professor Daman, for giving us an overview of what is game theory and telling us about John Nash and the activities and application area of game theory, and what are the requirements and kind of maybe an indication about the job opportunities and application area of game theory. It has been a very uh, informating and enlightening discussion, and thank you very much for that. And we'll come back to you and talk to you about other areas, because you have a wide ranging experience of teaching and interacting on a global level in various universities, coming into kind of various situations in far away places away from India, and for so this is very nice. Thank you very much, and we will come back to you, discuss about other experience, to learn from you sharing your experience. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, discussing about the game theory.